Welcome to Getting Defensive Weekend Primer, presented by Gridiron Ratings. I'm your host, JJ Renner, and we are coming to you live on a Thursday night. Right now, the Bucks are leading the Eagles 14-7, and we're about to take a look at the latest news and deliver our starting fives for each position. Now, with me tonight is Gridiron Ratings senior IDP analyst. You can find him on Twitter at the IDP Tipster, Gary Van Dyke. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing really good. How's every fantasy football fan doing, huh? We're rolling. Week 6.
Week 6. It was a little scary when I saw that today, but also with us is our returning champion. You can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Tripp. Tripp Brebner, how are you doing, Tripp?
I'm doing well, man. I'm still waiting for the trophy. What did I actually win, by the way?
You didn't get the trophy yet? It must be lost in the mail.
That's right.
It's on its way. All right, before we kick off, remember to subscribe below for a chance to win the Gridiron Ratings Playbook, the only resource you need for all of your fantasy leagues. We'll draw one winner for every 25 new subscribers, so be sure to hit the subscribe button below. Gentlemen, let's get to it. I was browsing the practice reports for this week. Khalil Mack, Jordan Hicks, and Shaq Thompson did not practice today. Tripp, are we confident any of these players will suit up on Sunday?
Mack has been questionable like every week. He's gotten to the point now where he gets that veteran rest day on Wednesday, but it's just a situation worth monitoring. So no, you can't be confident. But no, the other two. Well, Shaq missed last week, so yeah, he's got to monitor. So will he come back? We just have to wait and see. But Jermaine Carter, I think folks might have him queued up in reserve, but he hasn't been exactly gangbuster play either. So wouldn't stress too much about that one. But Hicks is, man, that'd be something if Zaven Collins got his chance.
Now, Gary, talking about Shaq Thompson and Jermaine Carter. Jermaine Carter is getting the snaps, but he's not producing. What's missing?
It's not. We got the same thing going on with Justin Sennard or whatever his name is in Denver that took over for Joey Jules. And it happens. Sometimes it's a matter of they're running the defense, and I do believe Jermaine Carter is definitely running the defense with the green dot. He's kind of putting himself out of the play and his other fellow teammates in play. It's kind of hard to put a finger on when you're looking at the situation that the guy's standing in the middle of the defense 90% of the time and should be absorbing some kind of production by default. So do I say that the guy sucks? Nah, not really. It's like when Chuck Clark first took over calling the plays for Baltimore about 3 years ago. And, he did good. He did really good. But the problem was that he had some inconsistencies up and down where he would get like 3 tackles and he'd get 6 or 7 tackles the next contest. And, when you're calling those plays on the field, sometimes it doesn't affect the guy. It's a little bit different when you have somebody like Bobby Wagner or, complete pro in there standing in, has been doing it forever, and he's calling the plays, and he did it in college. I don't have any excuses for Carter, but he's failed now for, I think, 3-4 weeks, something like that. Speaking of Sennard, if he does not register at least 5 sacks this week, he'll never do it the rest of the season because he's got the perfect case scenario matchup to do it this week. If he can't absorb something, he's not Bounty anymore. He's the generic store brand paper towel. Just let him go and forget about him.
Just a quick interjection. I do see here now that Matt Rule has already ruled out Shaq Thompson. He is out. The head coach of the Panthers.
All right. So Shaq Thompson is out. Fire up Jermaine Carter, and let's hope for the best.
No. I'm sorry, JJ. My perfect play, Hassan Reddick. He's gotten his same. He's done better with Thomas out. I think I think that's your go-to. If you're going to go to any linebacker play, go ahead and go get Hussein Reddick. He's going to get you a handful of tackles and probably get you a sack too. Probably, because Chin's not getting it done, and which we can hit on Chin again when we talk Johnson. I apologize, JJ.
No, don't apologize at all. Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett were both limited in practice today. Any concern for their matchup, Tripp?
The matchup for Clowney? Let's see. What do they got? They got the Cardinals. That's kind of interesting. I will worry about Clowney, though. He spends a lot of time banged up, and he seems to play less well when he's banged up. So that makes me a little nervous. But so I would not a guy I'd be rushing into my lineups if I could help it. Who was the other one you asked about?
Myles Garrett.
Myles Garrett. Well, it does not matter how thinking bad that matchup is. It doesn't matter if that quarterback has played 15 straight games out of sack. You play Myles Garrett.
Never sit your studs. Never sit your studs. Looking at some cornerbacks who have back-to-back did not practices. Trevon Diggs and Xavier Howard are both on their second day of not practicing. Are we concerned at all to fire them up this weekend, Gary?
I would wish I knew more of the coach's habits. I don't know. I'm going to let this one go. Tripp, what do you think? I
think anytime a player misses 2 consecutive days, we talked about Khalil Mack and the veteran rest day. Wednesday, you just don't worry, you don't sweat it with guys, even like Xavier Howard. But you start missing Thursday, it's a red flag. You just have to watch it. But the telling thing, and this is something I've always heard Gene Bramble, the football guy, say too. You watch practice participation on Friday because that's usually a tell. You get a pretty good idea if they're able to go. If they practice in a limited fashion and they're a veteran, you feel like, well, he's got a chance to play. But that's really the tell. And so on Thursday, it's a red flag, and they either correct it on Friday, they don't. And so, I think that Howard is a relatively attractive matchup if he goes, but we'll see. It's hard to speculate on injuries.
Yeah, Gene is one of the GOATs when it comes to injury. I follow him regularly. So, gentlemen, on last week's primer, we discussed Green Bay's newest linebacker, Jaylon Smith, and his role and who would lose out on snaps. Now, Smith did not play last week, but do we think we have any more clarity on a projected snap share for Jaylon, Gary?
I'm actually pretty concerned. Of course, we had a kind of a double story when Jamin Smith left. He was saying, well, it was all financial. And then there were reports that supposedly came out that coming from them, it was performance per payment. So what they was paying him, they didn't feel that it was worth what he was doing on the field. So I actually, I could have seen it when a first case scenario came along. I could see him pushing Campbell. I almost no longer see that. I actually don't know. Campbell's on a roll. I might not be a big fan of his. I don't know what happened to him last year with the Cardinals, but he's revived himself up there in Green Bay, and I think the best that we might see happen with Smith is that he surpasses Barnes. That's about it. I don't think he's got enough to get past Campbell as the main linebacker. What do you think, Tripp?
Well, I think this week you just got to see what happens. I think Campbell holds the job, and this week they got the Bears. You just can't even think about playing either Barnes or Smith against the Bears. They have such a low-pace offense as it is. There should be low tackle opportunities. So to watch 2 guys split snaps out there is just no good. But it's a good opportunity to watch and see what happens and see what the deployment is, because it's not like you had any incentive to start them anyway. So just want to wait and see.
Yeah, it is the first bye weeks, but hopefully you're not that desperate just yet. Hopefully.
Yeah, there's a bunch of pickups, so go pick somebody up.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah, Chris Barnes in his return last week only played 23 snaps at 34% share. So that was without Jaylon Smith playing. So I don't know. It's not.
I think that actually might be his share for the last couple of games he's played, not only just in his return, if I remember right.
After starting off with 78%, he was at 44, 14, week off, and then 34. So
okay, all right, okay.
Hovering around there. All right, in Tampa, JPP came back and sent Joe Tryon Shoenka back to a part-time role. Are we keeping Joe Tryon on our rosters, or do we cut him and just keep him on speed dial Tripp?
I think it's going to depend on your format. I hate to say that, but if he's just a linebacker, then no. But if he's an edge defender, then that's pretty attractive. He showed enough to me that I would try to hold on to him.
Gary, you on board with that with Tryon?
Yeah, I wouldn't have any trouble sticking him on some deep taxi squad or some really deep end of the bench thing, or just make a mental note. Because more than likely right now, if you dropped him, unless this is like some huge format, you could probably drop him and he'd still be sitting there in the off season, but you might want to react kind of early because I'm not sure what JPP's whole contract situation is, but he's been there for a while. He's been getting paid. If it's not up soon, there's probably some outs coming up considering his age. They usually think of that ahead of time. So you just play it by the news. He is a stash, though. I think he impressed.
Now, looking at the comments, Craig Reith comments that he's hearing Gary be sad about Jaylon is heartbreaking. I think you broke Craig Reith's heart, buddy.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it happens more often than I like to admit it. Tranquil break my heart last year. Jared Davis to start this year. Oh, it comes with the territory.
Well, speaking of disappointment, I don't know if there's been a more disappointing defense in the NFL than the Washington football team this year. We all had very high hopes for them, and they've been. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Now, we talked about their linebackers with John Bostic going on IR after week 4. Jamin Davis only played 13 snaps. He barely outplayed David Mayo, formerly of the Giants. Do we see any value on this team for linebackers outside of Cole Holcomb? Tripp?
Not soon. Not soon. It was just the sadness with Jamin Davis not getting on the field. And they got the Chiefs this week, and that those looks they showed last week where they seem to be more interested in showing 3 safety sets because they have Cameron Curl and Landon Collins. You're drawing the Saints. I don't see why you wouldn't try to go back to that again if you thought that was the solution to your defense without Bostic out there. So I think Davis is going to have to earn play over time and just kind of see a gradual increase in snaps if he can do it, which I would think that he would. I mean, you typically don't draft a guy in the first, especially a middle linebacker in the first round, and not plug him in there. But we got 2 teams doing that right now. It's bizarre.
Yeah, the first thing that I did as soon as I seen how low that snap was, and then I was seeing how low David Mayo's was, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you couldn't have had Holcomb patrolling that whole inside by himself the entire time, even though I think he might have produced like it. So the first thing I do is I go, and we knew already that there was some kind of weird 3 safety sets that they had been running with Curl, Bobby McCain, the former Dolphins, with them this year, and in London, and London Collins. So turn around, and they had already kind of started giving Curl a little bit more snaps, I believe, prior to last week. But as soon as Bostic goes on, I believe his share went all the way up to like 90%. Bobby McCain's full time at 95, 100%, and then Collins is too. So apparently they found that they would rather run more 3 defensive backs or safeties than they would 2 linebackers. It's the only way that I could read it at this moment. Now, I try to look and see. I mean, the first thing you want to do is, okay, is the guy getting nicked up? Is there something wrong with Davis? I mean, it really showed a lot of love for him in the offseason. Riviera went as far as saying the next Thomas Davis, so it is confusing on why he got cut at a time that they really needed him on the field more. But, this whole defense, just like JJ said at the beginning, the whole defense seems to be a little bit off this year compared to what we thought that they would come in. When you've got pass rushers and a defensive line like that, underperforming as a whole, it just affects, I guess, the entire defense from the get-go beyond that front 7. But either way, right now, Davis is nothing but you put him right back on your bench until we get further notice.
All right.
For what it's worth, Thomas Davis didn't start his rookie year either. So
that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches are creatures of habit.
They are. They definitely are. Now, from Twitter, Dynasty Logics asks, which linebacker would you rather start this week? David Long, AJ Klein, Jerome Baker, and Patrick Queen. Who do you pick out of those four, Tripp?
So I don't see it in the comments. Name them again.
Sorry, Long, Klein, Jerome Baker, or Queen.
Oh man, I like Long. He put up like 10 or 12 tackles last week. They're just popping up now. Yeah, I think that Long's pretty attractive. That's a guy I'm looking forward to starting. It's Monday night matchup. They got the Bills there, and those two teams are leading the league in pace, which makes it attractive. Then you got David Long going to be chasing around, Zach Moss and Devin Singletary and the running quarterback Josh Allen. I'm pretty interested in that and just what he's shown so far in terms of volume and then the matchup and the high pace. I'm pretty attracted to that. That said, I'd give honorable mention to Queen. I think Queen's in a pretty good spot there too, playing the Chargers, who also run a high snap count, and he'll have to chase around Austin Eckler. So a couple of good options there.
Yeah, I thought that was a good one too. Love Long, and the only thing I can say beyond what Tripp said was, hey, GR members, you remember about 3 weeks ago when I started penciling in next to Long's name, keep an eye on this guy, and kept saying it. Hey, Evans going down, yeah, that helps the situation a lot because Evans was holding his own pretty well there. But in the whole situation unfolding, I believe it's unfolded for a reason this way. I got Long in. Queen's one of those ones. I think he's been disappointing his owners. I don't own him. I wouldn't pay his ADP this past year. So, and I've never really owned him in before in any of my dynasties. So, at the same time, Long is not going to get you interceptions, passes defended. He might get a couple, but he's not going to make any big splash plays. What he's going to get you is just the productive by default base tackles. That's what you're going to see. That's it, but it's going to be a high ceiling worth, especially on that defense now. And him, the facto de Mayo dog linebacker with Evans gone and Brown gone. So,
yeah, it's a good point about the big play. Queen can get a sack, and because he blitzes more because the Ravens blitz like crazy. Yeah, that could be the upside play if somebody's trying to make a decision based on that.
All right. Well, with the return of Willie Gay, we saw Hitchens and Bolton both see an increase in snaps. Now, was this matchup based because it was Buffalo, or do you think we're going to see Gay push one of these two out? Tripp?
I'll start this. I saw something, and never sure what to trust on the Bird app, but a beat reporter posted something about Willie Gay having some, I don't know, mental health issues, I guess, something to that effect with respect to adjusting back to, I guess it might be depressing to be on the sideline with an injury. I've been seriously injured before, so I could see that. And so I was wondering if he'd play at all last week after seeing that news late last week. And so it's hard to know when that kind of thing comes up. There's no analyst who understands how that's going to play out in the field. And so with that said, Gay is a guy that I have liked. I hope he gets right. But I can't predict how that's going to affect what his role is or how he comes back. Just looking at the numbers, I would say that he has been hurt for several weeks and got on the field and got back into the flow of things, and you don't worry too much about the numbers relative to the other players. And I would think that he would show enough to tick up because they drafted him to take over for not so much Bolton. Bolton was drafted this year, but he was drafted to take over for these older, unathletic guys like Anthony Hitchens and Damian Wilson, and now's the time. So he steps up and earns it, or he doesn't, and Bolton and Hitchens stay out there.
Yeah, and until it does weed itself out, just sit them. I hate to say just sit them and during bye weeks in some deep formats that you play either one of them. You know, they've had a horrible rotation for the last few years, other than Hitchens, and Hitchens doesn't even get all of his all the time. So I don't risk it, folks. Not right now. I would try to go after somebody like David Long, or reach a little bit if you need to. At least get somebody that's is going to be on the field.
Now, in Indy, we saw the return of Willis to the lineup, but he only saw 26% of the snaps. Is this a result of the injury or play? He's been pretty terrible in coverage this year when healthy, Tripp.
Yeah, I think it's still injury, though. I mean, they're trotting out Andrew Sendejo in his place. Like, you can't tell me that Andrew Sendejo is an upgrade. I mean, and he got banged up himself, too, if I'm not mistaken. Sendejo, that is. I like you mentioned, I think Kari Willis has struggled a little bit this year. I'd be wanting to sit him, in part because of that, but in part because they play Houston, which Davis Mills is going to show up for the Texans. And he looked horrendous 2 weeks ago. I think it was against the Bills. And then last week, he looked pretty good against the Patriots. And this is the same Patriots team that stifled Tom Brady. So, maybe they thought they could mail it in one week. I don't know. But I'm very curious to see how that game goes. But I would not be eager to trot Kari Willis back out on it.
Not yet.
Good. Gary is on board with you. Now, on Reddit, Legendary Assassin asks, who to start for week 6? Another David Long question. David Long, Jordan Hicks, or Jamal Adams? Gary, who are you starting out of those three?
Jamal Adams, David Long, or
Jordan Hicks.
Man, shoot me in the foot. But I won't. I'm going to go Long. I'm just going to go Long. Adams has not gotten his like he has in the past. All of a sudden, Diggs, a guy that could barely hit anything last year. Of course, Adams was getting it all when he played. It seemed like, they kind of like switched roles here at the beginning of the season or something. And Hicks, if I remember right, I don't like the matchup as much as I would the Long's idea of him getting production by default. So these are deeper dudes. These are not like my top prime guys that I would probably try to focus on and to begin with. So yeah, I'd swing for the fence and hit Long.
Tripp, you on board with that?
To me, it's pretty long because we heard that Hicks is banged up, and you got I like the matchup actually with Cleveland. I mean, I think that's who Arizona plays this week, and that's pretty attractive. But if Hicks is banged up, I typically fade guys if they go into games questionable, at least a little bit, because something can happen like with Kari Willis last week, where he's not able to return. Or Bud Dupree, for example, he wasn't ready to go at all, and he's not playing now at all. So I worry a little bit about banged up guys, and the Long we like in a situation with a good matchup, and so that would be the tiebreaker for me. The fact that Hicks is going in banged up, and then for Jamal Adams, he's not blitzing nearly as much as he did last year. He didn't blitz at all against the Rams, and if he's not blitzing, well, that's like the basis of his fantasy value is that he's making those big plays and collecting those sacks. I think he led the Seahawks last year with 9 sacks. He doesn't have any sacks this year, I don't think.
And
he's only had one game. Yeah, and he's only had one game with more than two blitz attempts per Pro Football Reference. So that's a guy that I've got to sit at least relative to those other players. So if that's the decision out of flex spot, I assume, then yeah, I got to sit Adams. And I mean, it's interesting that somebody's already made a decision that they have safeties they'd rather play ahead of him, but against linebackers, he sits.
Yeah, I have to agree. Best trade ever by the Jets. Still can't believe that trade happened. But thank you, Pete Carroll. So let's jump over and take a look at the starting 5. We're going to go through Gary's top 5 at each position and see who he is starting for week 6. Now, Gary, who is your number 5 starter for defensive lineman?
Get there. Let's see. I'll go with Daniel Hunter versus Carolina at number 5. He would normally be a little higher in this situation when he would be in my top 5. But it boiled down to I like the matchups of the players better that's ahead of them, which we'll get to.
All right, so let's jump right to number 4. You have Cameron Hayward for the Steelers?
Yep. He's going up against the Seahawks. It's a great matchup off the edge. Plus, I did not get any shares of him. Apparently, it's gone under my radar a little bit. Hayward's having him a pretty good year too, so his production per snap is there. So there's no reason he shouldn't be able to match the MSR or the matchup strength against Seattle this week.
All right, your number 3 defensive lineman is Joey Bosa.
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. And they have New York, right? Am I correct with that?
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Oh yeah, Baltimore. Baltimore's gifting the production off the edge this year. They are a top 7 matchup for one of the best veteran pass rushers in the league. So, yep, that's where he slots in there.
And then your top 2, Aaron Donald comes in at number 2, and Myles Garrett at number 1.
All right.
Got to go with Garrett and Donald, right?
Yeah. And that was another one of those things. So, is Daniel Jones playing this year? Is he hurt?
He's concussed. He has to clear. We don't know if he's going to clear or not. Can't know until Saturday. It's at the earliest.
Right. It really doesn't matter to me. I'm looking more at the fact of, again, the kind of production that the Giants allow more on the interior, not directly off the edge. Now, Aaron Donald is a defensive end technically in his scheme, but technically is still an interior defensive lineman because he has Floyd on the other side, on the outside edge most of the time, rushing the passer. So he's not a true edge rusher per se. But I like what the Giants are giving up on the inside. You look at what he's been able to pull off. I have no problem at all having him slotted in at number 2. I think he could actually get to the quarterback at least once this game. That's a defensive tackle play too, folks. Remember, we're talking about DLs. So DLs, usually you want to kind of go with the defensive ends. But basically when I looked at everything this weekend, I only had like 6 or 7 really strong matchups for really good studs. The rest of them were fairly difficult. So this is how they felt for me.
So, Tripp, where are you with this top 5? Are you on board with it? Anything you want to get defensive about?
I'm interested that Danielle Hunter's that low. I like that matchup. I think he's in a good spot this weekend against the Panthers. You've seen, I think that offense came back to earth a little bit last week. I'm not a proponent of Sam Darnold. I think that they had some soft matchups that they took advantage of. I was on a Panthers podcast over the summer and with Panthers fans and whatnot. I was, take some heat for predicting them to have a losing record. I'm going to stand by that. I hate to say it because I like the Panthers. I lived in South Carolina for 25 years, but I just don't see it. I'm just not a believer in that quarterback. He sees ghosts, as we all know, for that famous line on Monday night. So I think he's going to be seeing the ghost and the presence of Danielle Hunter on Sunday. So that's I'm a little surprised he's that low. But other than that, those are solid players, obviously.
As a Jets fan, that quote will always haunt me. All right, let's jump to the linebackers, my favorite position group. Starting with number 5, Gary, you have Christian Kirksey at number 5.
Yeah, I'm going to jump him up here like I did C.J. Mosley when him and Quinn went off against Tennessee. Let's see here. They're playing Indiana. Indiana and Houston are both just, when it comes to IDP points, they're allowing a lot to the inside linebackers. So You can guess who's higher up on the list, but I really like it. I like Kirksey's matchup this week in this division.
And then, bless your heart, Tremaine Edmonds is going to have a big week. He's your number 4.
Yeah.
Your lips to God's ears. I'm trying to trade him in a league, but I'm just waiting for a couple good weeks so I can offload him.
Well, if he's going to have it, it's probably going to be, it's a top 3 matchup on paper. So if he does not produce possibly because they haven't played, if he doesn't produce his best game this week in fantasy scoring, then yeah, we've got some real concerns because the matchup is that good. And I know from tracking his past week's matchups, they've been okay. They've been just good enough, but this is probably his best favorable matchup for the year.
Now, your top 3 is about as chalk as it can get. I love these top 3. At number 3, you have Roquan Smith. Number 2, Bobby Wagner. And your number 1 is Darius Leonard. Start your studs. So what about these matchups gets you so excited this week?
Well, again, we go to Leonard at number 1. Him and Kirksey going to be facing off across from each other. It's a Houston, Indianapolis contest. Both of them. I mean, Leonard has not been the stud that he's been this year. This is actually, I think, maybe beyond week 1. This is the first time that he's reached my number 1 linebacker spot. He's been like 3 and 4 in my rankings on Fantasy Pros. Wagner with the Steelers. You know how hard, I want to mention about this one here, how hard it was not to bring Brooks up because they both have the same matchup. Brooks has really kicked it up for the last couple of times. And I almost thought about bringing him in there. Brooks to me is probably just around that 7 or 8 mark. But he was so enticing that I almost brought him up into the top 5 over Kirksey. What do you think about that one, Tripp?
The only thing I worry about Brooks is he doesn't necessarily play full time every week, and that's what scares me. No. And if they go out there against Pittsburgh, we'll have to see what Pittsburgh does. Without Smith-Schuster, it's usually Smith-Schuster goes put on IR for the year. I'm not sure they're going to continue to show that just predominant 3 receiver set that they've been showing all year. Maybe they will, because Deontay Johnson can play in the slot, and then Washington and Claypool will play on the boundary. Claypool's a little banged up too. We've been seeing an awful lot of run from Najee Harris, of course, and that's what makes the linebackers so attractive, of course. But even then, if they're still playing a lot of 3 receiver sets, then it's going to be more 3, more nickel, more dime, and Brooks could lose snaps. So that would be my only hesitation on that one.
Yep, and that's exactly why he did not make it. Got to look at those averages. Got to thread those hairs.
Looking forward, dynasty lens here. Jordan Brooks or Tremaine Edmonds? Tripp?
That is a tough one. I would say Edmonds by a hair, and the reason why is because Brooks can't seem to get out there full time. That's the concern for me. He's in year 2. He's a first-round pick. And, it's like a lot of these other first-round picks. Everybody said it was COVID last year. And I had a hard time buying that, but, I talked to enough people, and I guess I allowed myself to be swayed. But, it's like, Brooks and Queen and Murray and all these guys were bad last year. It just it's tough. But Edmonds has never been good necessarily. I think, I was looking a second ago. Edmonds is like 41st in linebackers in total fantasy points right now. There may be some edges in there with him on Fantasy Pros, but man, it's like, how do you pay anything for that? I mean, yes, he's full time, but it's like just warm body. You're putting a guy in there solely because of the snaps. Now, like Gary says, great matchup this week. Chase and Derrick Henry around, high snap counts. If it doesn't happen this week, when is it going to happen? So this may be the week. This may be the week we know, right? So if Edmonds doesn't produce and Brooks does, then you flip him in the ranks.
Yeah. I actually had earlier today or yesterday, a fellow that I help out all the time as a Gridiron Ratings member, where I system. He got a hold of me in chat and was like, he'd been questioning me about Cunningham for weeks now. And I kept telling him, hold, just like everybody else, hold, But then this past week, I changed my tune. Or at least as of Tuesday, I changed my tune about on our waiver wire period on IDP First Take Tuesday. And I'm ready to let Cunningham walk. I don't like the situation. He found out he took a pay cut at the beginning. I did not know that he took a pay cut after getting a big contract. They chopped him down to like $5 million a year this past offseason. And it almost, I know he's just been hurt. He's had this problem, and he got benched for like the first quarter for some disciplinary problems one game. That's when Grugier Hill started showing up. I washed my hands, but the question was Cunningham for Brooks. I'm like, you're telling me Brooks is on the waiver wire, but this was kind of a shallow league, folks. So this is kind of a vanilla thing. But yes, go get Brooks over Cunningham. Cunningham's done nothing to secure any faith in him resuming his top 10 LB1 status this year whatsoever. And the way that the season's going, speaking of, if we notice, and I had looked at it before, but it seems like we're getting a lot more accredited assist tackles than we are solo tackles from our home stat crews. And believe it or not, folks, this really matters. And it's kind of, I'm not sure the reads that I'm getting in this balanced formats, in my MFL leagues and my sleeper leagues, the ones that I can really tell, things are a little bit Walker-jawed with this balanced format, more assists. I'm not sure what to make of it. It doesn't mean it's going to continue either, but it's something to note because people might find that if this continues that by the end of the year, that you might want to adjust that assisted tackle, either up or down or whatever you want to do it, or depending on what kind of league you want. But it's just, it's starting to gain more value. I used to go 1.5 for 1.5. I used to, back 10 years ago, 1.5 points for solo, 1.5 points for assist. I like the assist. I've never been one to go, well, let's go pad the box score to bring in a cornerback so I can make him usable. I really didn't care. So now that the systems are set up the way they are with people with the balanced formats and everybody seems to be jumping on board with it, I think there might be a little bit of tweaking to be done with this whole situation after this year. I think that if it's not done overall, I think the general or commissioners or league managers will start doing it on their own. But we'll wait and see. It could flip-flop. It could turn all the way around. Maybe these are all actual assists, so maybe there's nothing really off. Maybe there's just a lot more guys getting to the ball at the same time this year. I'm not really sure. There's something to keep an eye on.
Speaking of that, we talked last week about the possibility that the game in London would have virtually no assists awarded, and that didn't happen. So apparently the NFL has coached up the stat crew out there, and they awarded a whole bunch of assists. So that wasn't even remotely correct in the sense that fear was not remotely warranted that they wouldn't get any assists. And a couple of those linebackers were fine in terms of sits. A couple of them didn't. But anyway, yeah, so maybe there's been some talk around the league with stat crews about it. Not sure.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they became more uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah. That's the one thing about IDP that's still a little bit off, is that the fact that stat crews can vary so much from team to team.
Yep.
All right. Let's finish out the starting fives by going over your defensive back starters. Starting out at number 5, the old man himself, Logan Ryan.
Yep. Like his matchup against the Rams, like his situation. Folks, McKinney's came back up. As we all seen, Peppers, I believe, missed the game this past week. One of these times, McKinney's going to stick. And I'm betting on him this weekend to stick. I like this matchup for McKinney, too. He's just not a top 5 for me. And I'll eat crow if he doesn't outperform Peppers at Peppers plays. But, I put my money where my mouth is. But I do like this. I do like this matchup for him. Sort of my information here real quick. Let's see. The Rams are 8th. They're only in the top 10 in this matchup, but it seems like nowadays, especially, everything's funneled to, around, or within Logan Ryan. So, there's only so much talent at the linebacker position in front of them. I think that their secondary is probably their second best talented group on the field, and I expect them to feed.
All right, in your number 4 spot, we have from Arizona, Budda Baker.
Kind of probably a little bit surprising. He's not a little higher here for a lot of people just by his name. And it's debatable. Again, folks, anywhere in this top 10 and these top 5s, you can go to anybody else's rankings and stuff. It's splitting the hairs. Most of these guys are all going to be just perfectly fine. It's going to be a minute amount. So rankings are, we was talking about it before we came on, me and Tripp, or Tripp was talking about, neither one of us like to rank. I don't like to rank. I'm ranking on Fantasy Pros kind of under protest. But either way it is, I jump back into the expert form, and I hate it. I hate it. I'm going to stick with it, but I hate it.
Now, at number 3, you have the pugilist himself, Jaylon Carrer.
Yeah, I'm riding that hot hand, and I think with New England, let's see, allowing a top 3 amount of points to the safety position, plus they look pretty good allowing points into the interior too, and the way the situation is. What I meant by the interior, believe it or not, into the midfield to the linebackers. So I think it's a double combination when they're up there allowing in the box production and safety production. I think this is going to fall right in there versus Will House. He's gonna be a top 3 guy this week.
Actually, he'll be number 3.
Yeah.
The number 2 guy for the week is going to be Derwin James.
That's a no-brainer for most people. James coming off a substantially impressive outing last week in IDP. There's no denying he is one of the best. So he gets his position. I'm trying to remember who they're playing. Baltimore? Tell me, Tripp.
The Chargers?
Chargers.
Yeah.
Oh, I got on my star right here. The Chargers are playing the Ravens, I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Baltimore.
Ravens. Yeah.
And there's another one of those situations where I like the matchup. Baltimore is when you add his. You can't even talk about Derwin James's snap production per snap now after last week. That's just he would have to basically stink for the next 3 weeks for those numbers to catch up to mean anything. So that's going to be kind of hard to talk about. But as far as the matchup, Baltimore's allowing it from where I sit, the information I have, they're allowing the most points to the safety position right now.
Now, in a shock, Tripp, I hope you're sitting down. Who is your number 1 defensive back, Gary?
I can't believe I'm going to have to go with Diggs in Dallas. We got to talk about a cornerback going number 1. I mean, this guy's on fire. Is there nobody? Is he that bad, Tripp, that everybody just wants a piece of him, or is he just that damn good?
Dude, he's good. He has 6 picks, 10 passes defensed, a defensive touchdown. He has 16 tackles, which is, it's not, some. But the point is that he's playing really well, and he's getting his hands on the ball. He's asked to play a lot of press man. He's allowed to play aggressively. He's getting in there and making plays. And he has an interception in every game so far. So ranking him number 1 means you're betting on him getting another pick. And it's not impossible because he's playing against a team that gives up a ton of points to cornerbacks and in the Patriots, and a rookie quarterback who might just throw another pick.
Yeah. And I didn't pick that blindly. I just picked it under protest. I'm not a big cornerback fan, but you got to give the guy. I'm starting to get into him. Tripp's kind of weaning me that way. But we'll see how he does. I probably just jinxed him for the rest of the year because it would be the first time ever that I put one in number one like this. So I probably jinxed him, and for the rest of the year, every quarterback will just avoid him. He'll become what we call a shutdown guy, because that's what happens. That's these guys that play this well. If it transfers from IDP, forget IDP. If he's this good in the NFL, he'll be a shutdown corner soon enough, and he will try to go somewhere else.
The one good thing, though, about the Cowboys is that they score so many points that teams have to throw.
Very true.
So, if teams are trying to come back, you can't just use half the field.
Good point.
So I think Trevon Diggs is going to continue to produce, at least for the foreseeable future. Gentlemen, it is time for final thoughts. You can find Tripp at Dynasty Tripp on Twitter, and his work is at dynastyfootballfactory.com. Tripp, any last words for us?
It's going to be an interesting week. We got bye weeks happening. The depth of rosters is going to start to be tested. So people are going to start having interesting start decisions. So good luck to all. Hit us up on Twitter. We'll help you out.
Absolutely. Keep an eye on your waiver wire. People might be cutting people on buys. This is a good time to pick up somebody who's making a desperate decision. Finally, the OG of IDP can be found at the IDP Tipster on Twitter, and subscribe to Gridiron Ratings for all of his IDP analysis. Gary, any final thoughts?
Just like to ask everybody, go subscribe, like, comment, give us some love on YouTube. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Thank you to Tripp and Gary for joining me tonight. Thank you to everybody for tuning in and leaving your comments. Make sure you tune into our IDP First Take, hosted by Craig Reith and the crew. Don't forget to subscribe for a chance to win a Gridiron Ratings Playbook. Remember, your path to the title starts with Gridiron Ratings. Good night.